Hey everybody, this is Aaron Noe with WinConductor.com, and I'm very pleased to announce our next guest. Joining us from the Four Corners area of the Colorado Rockies. He's joining us on his vacation while he's out enjoying the elements, enjoying mornings of fishing. We are so pleased to introduce Mr. Gary Gackstatter. Gary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So we know you from your compositions. You've been composing for a little while now, and we won't get into the too many years because that'll put an age on who we are and all that other stuff. But tell us a little bit about your background, because it's always cool to when we meet composers to talk about their backgrounds. And I guess maybe just start from the beginning. It happened in a band room somewhere. So what is your first experience with band?
Well, my sister, Cindy, is 2 years older than me. We grew up in a town called Guyman, Oklahoma, and it's out in the middle of the Oklahoma Panhandle, for crying out loud. And it was a 3A school at the time, and we had tremendous bands. We didn't know it, but looking back, I mean, we were playing grade 5 and grade 6 literature. Every contest we went to, we won sweepstakes, blah, 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 blah. Well, I was in the 4th grade and my sister was in the 6th, and they had one of those bandorama things where all the bands play. And the high school band played the finale from Shostakovich's Fifth.
Nice.
And I knew at that moment exactly what I was going to do. That piece floored me. I had no idea that stuff was out there. And, then started playing trombone in band, and my twin sister Patty played trumpet, and we grew up in a very musical family, although neither of my parents had a college education. They were both really into music, and there was always music on in the house, highly regarded. And we had really great instructors, Jerry Toller, Harry Ward, people like that. And we played the socks off of this really difficult literature. Started going to band camp at Southwestern, Oklahoma State, made All-State in jazz band, started playing screech trumpet and euphonium, and got my degree from Southwestern and started teaching in Oklahoma. I did 8 years in the public schools there, junior high and high school. And then took a year off and got my master's degree at Wichita State. And then took a job in Ark City, Kansas, and then moved up to the college level 4 years later, and I've never looked back. I've been at the college level since 1994.
Okay. Yeah. So we have a mix of followers on the Win Conductor site and on Facebook. We have people who teach, middle school, high school, college level. So I'd love to talk to you about some of the experiences that you experienced. Let's talk about your first teaching position, and what were some of the things that you noticed as a young teacher? You said that you came out of a really strong program when you were a youth, and what was it like for you in your first position? Did you walk into a really great program, or was it?
Well, the high school it was in a fairly large town in Oklahoma, and they had two, what they called at the time, junior highs, and one was really good and one was on the other side of the tracks. I got the one that was on the other side of the tracks.
Okay.
And assisted at the high school and did the jazz band and things like that. It was rough. It was very, I was not prepared. We did real well after a while. The I student taught there the year before. And while I was student teaching, the director I was working with got canned, and I took over the program for the rest of the semester. As a student teacher, which is, not allowed.
Yeah.
But I did. And then I got the job, and it was trying to turn a very bad program around. And it was a very difficult first year, and I made it through. And my second and third, I was the first teacher at that junior high to last 3 years in the 25-year history of that school.
Wow.
So I have a real heart for public school teachers, small school teachers, middle school teachers. I think our pay scale is completely upside down. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
they work incredibly hard.
I
And
think the teachers in Oklahoma would agree with you on that one with
oh
all
yeah,
they've been through
oh
this
yeah.
year. Yeah.
And I think I was making 13.5 my first year.
Mm, yeah.
And I was 21 years old and had all the energy and very little wisdom. And coming out of such strong programs at my college and my high school, I didn't understand the rest of the world was not like that. And so to turn a program around that had no basics, they didn't hardly play. Most of the time they just sat around. And
Yeah.
here I was, this big bad guy that came in and, wanted them to play every day. So, but the longer you teach, really the easier it gets, and that would be my advice to young teachers. I've got a lot of advice for young teachers because nobody helped me. I needed a mentor. I needed somebody that I could lean on, and I was kind of out there by myself in a lot of ways. But there was good high school band director, and the other junior high director was very good, and they helped me extremely. But there was nobody at that school that understood what was going on there,
Mhm.
and it was a very, very difficult first year.
Now, we hear that a lot in our music education community, where you have a band director that is going in and trying to make these positive changes. We all realize the value of music education. Those of us that have been in it know that it has value, but it's hard when the community that you're in, the school that you're in, doesn't value and appreciate it. What were some of the things that you did to start building that appreciation for the program that you were creating?
Well, most principals in Oklahoma at that time were, coaches that had a losing season, and so they understood winning. They understood trophies.
Okay.
And we started bringing home trophies. We started making ones. More kids were joining band. There was a lot of retention. I taught lessons every day. I had a very active parent group. I was involved in the community music scene as much as I possibly could be. And, I was busy from dawn till dark, 7 days a week, trying to build that program up. And I dearly loved those kids. It's kind of fun now going back and seeing them on Facebook and stuff like that, because, that was when I was cutting my teeth as a director. And, a lot of them still play. It's very gratifying to see the impact I had even back then. It's really gratifying, as it is with most band directors. You wait long enough and you'll see this happen.
Yeah. I really liked what you said about being not only part of your program within the school, within the building, within that small community, but actually reaching out and being part of your larger community and trying to be involved with the music scene out there. How important do you think that is as a director to be involved with the musical community outside the school as well?
I think that you're not just a band director when you're on the podium. I think you're a band director every time you go outside your house, especially in small towns.
Yeah.
And you've got to stand for something, and you've got to be a magnet. And to do that, first of all, you have to believe in what you're doing. And of course we do as music educators. And I just found that if the kids saw you out doing something outside of school, that was very, very important to them. I would go to their recitals. If they played in a church somewhere, I would go hear them play. If they needed somebody to come in, I would be there, all of this stuff. So I just got as active as I could, and it really changed their idea of what a band director could be, and and be a part of their lives, because you're not really just teaching music. You're teaching a lot more than that. It's how to be a human being, and that's really what we're in this for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. I love that. There's a quote, one of the great band directors, and I'm showing my ignorance by not remembering which great band director it was that said this. And I know that the followers will probably correct me when they post in the follow up of this, but they we don't teach music, but we teach people music, so, or something to that effect. And that's kind of what you're saying. It's a lot more than just the notes on the page that we're talking about.
Well, we make a mistake by calling pieces of paper with black dots on it music. No, it's a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It's not music until a human being plays it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. No, you said it, man. So you taught for 8 years, and then you went into a master's program. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about your master's program. What made you decide to start pursuing that side of things?
I really wanted to be a better conductor, and I wanted to be a better player, and I wanted to advance, and you just can't do it without a master's degree. And I wanted to possibly teach at college someday. And by that time I was in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I was playing for Dr. Joe Missile at OSU. And he turned my life around as a teacher, as a conductor, as a player. Golly, what an influence he had on me. I had no idea. But he was my gateway to Grainger, basically, and a lot of creative wind ensemble literature that I'd never heard of. And he basically turned the entire state of Oklahoma around about thinking about wind ensemble literature and thinking about band as an art form instead of just as entertainment, sports enhancement, contest machines. He was really into music, band music, wind ensemble music as an art form, and he is an outstanding conductor.
Yeah.
Really inspiring to me.
That's cool. So what were some of the, because after your master's degree, you transitioned into college teaching, and what do you feel is the biggest transition for a music educator to transition from secondary teaching to college teaching? What are some of the things that you experienced that were the same, different, whatever?
Well, after my master's, I took a job in Arkansas City, Kansas for 4 years, and they had about 50 people in the high school when I got there, in the high school band, and they had 150 when I left. Wow. And I didn't have any help. I couldn't get any help. And so the college there in Ark City, Cowley College, built a brand new fine arts center with a beautiful auditorium. And the president of the college said, "Hey, we need a band director." And I said, "Well, okay, I'll give it a try." Because basically what they had there before was a glorified pep band. And I said, "I don't want to do that." Right. If that's all it is, I'm not interested. I'm interested in having a serious music program. And he said, "Fine. What do you need?" Best thing that ever happened to me. I felt like I had been set free. Those last 4 years, my spring concert, the last concert I did at that high school, I went back and I tallied up all the performances I had done in 4 years. Now this includes honor bands, community band, symphony concerts. I took over a regional symphony there, jazz band, contests, parades, pep assemblies. In 4 years, I had done 200 performances.
Wow. So
when I got to the college level, it released my creativity. I was able to spend more time composing. I was able to go out and start helping band directors. I was at that point in my career, the exact point when I could get out and start doing band clinics. And, you know, I've probably done over 1,000 band clinics since then. You know, going out and talking to schools. Of course, it recruited for the college, but it really helped those band programs too. So it was a life changer for me.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. So, you know, that's one of the things I love about doing these interviews is you learn so much about other musicians, other conductors and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, you know, 200 performances over 4 years, that's averaging about one a week.
Oh, and, well, think about it, man. How many times as a high school band director, any of you high school band directors out there, tell me, when was a week that you didn't have a performance, or did
Right.
you have 3 performances?
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. I mean, it is mind blowing the amount of work it is, and you know, so, and I did very, very well at it. I was very proud of what we achieved, but so much of the high school band director routine is either sports enhancement or contest. And I got to see both as I got to be kind of cynical about both of them, because sometimes contest is just a crapshoot. And, you know, and it doesn't really prove anything. We got our ones, believe me, we got more trophies than they ever had before, but now those trophies are just sitting there collecting dust. It was the musical experiences that we had that really mattered. And I quit taking contests so seriously, and that's when we started making all the superior ratings.
Right.
Interestingly enough, you know, so.
That's cool. I would imagine that when it came to preparation for the different performances that you're doing, because you wind up becoming so busy and enthralled, you wind up getting into a routine of score study. What were some of the things that, you know, I guess, what are some of the things that you would advise somebody when it comes to score study? Maybe talk about what your score study technique is and what you do to study and prepare.
I go through probably 50 scores before I find one that appeals to me.
Okay.
You got to know your strengths. You got to know your weaknesses. You got to understand what your group needs to improve on. You've got to pick educational literature. You've got to pick expressive literature.
Right.
Once I find that score, then I go through it with a fine-tooth comb. I play every part on my instrument. I play guitar. I try to play as much of it on guitar as well. Get the chords, get the chord structure. Then I start finding the inner structures and building it from the bass line up. It's not just the melody that's important, it's the supporting lines underneath it.
Sure.
Like if you're going to play a piece of Grainger that you've never played before, there's a lot of tricks in there. And he's always putting things in there, not just Grainger, but a lot of people, they put things in there that need to come out in addition to the melody. And then I listen to recordings over and over by as many different groups as I possibly can. And then I don't do it like any of them.
Yeah. You know, you were talking about Grainger, and this is getting off the subject and everything, but last night, unwinding and stuff, I came across on YouTube, they've got the old piano rolls of Grainger playing his music, where they, which is the old recording device of the early 20th century. But it is so interesting. You know, my first experience with Grainger was conducting my high school band with Shepherd's Hay. My first experience on the podium as a conductor, I should say. And, you know, in preparation for that, I was listening to a lot of different recordings. I was listening to all these different classic recordings and everything. But I sat there listening to that piano roll of him playing Shepherd's Hay on the piano. And there's so much that we miss in the band world.
Oh, my. Yeah. Yeah, go back, and if it is a Grainger piece and he did play it on piano, you can find it. Or anybody else's pieces. transcriptions, for example. You know, yeah, oh yeah, the mind of Grainger.
Yeah.
Um, he's my hero. I mean,
Yeah.
I just, he has big spark. I'm
Yeah.
telling you what. We're still trying to catch up with that guy.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. And he was one of those guys that, you know, related to what you were talking about, he never stopped growing as a musician, as a conductor, as a composer. You know, everything he did was constantly pushing that envelope forward.
Well, and he was constantly writing.
Yeah.
You know, I just got an arrangement published of a piece that I didn't even know about, called "There Was a Pig Went Out to Dig."
Okay.
And it was a children's tune that he found. He dedicated it to Edward Elgar, and it was originally scored for 5 women's voices.
Okay.
And he took this children's song, he added his own verses, and all of those tricky harmonies and those jigs that he does,
Yeah.
all those weird things are all there. I just transcribed it for wind ensemble.
Right.
It's a hoot, man. It is a hoot to play.
That's
And
awesome.
you know, I've done enough Grainger that I know what he would have done with the percussion, and I kept all his original markings, you know,
Right.
loudingly lots, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's a really cool piece to play.
Yeah.
The more you know about Grainger, the more you know you don't know.
Right. Yeah. So, well, and that's
A piece like Lincolnshire, he never even wrote out a full score to it.
right.
Now you tell me how you do that.
No,
How do you, you know, how? And, you know, without a computer where, you know, he probably wrote it on the train, you know?
right. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's amazing. And we're getting off the subject. You're but I mean, it's a passion we're obviously both, that we both share in. I like to actually go and listen to talking about different recordings and stuff like that, with some of the folk music that he used in Lincolnshire Posey, to go and listen to how the Englanders actually sing some of those. And obviously you can go back and listen to his old recordings and pick up on some of the things that, as he was recording some of the, you know, the natives of England, when he went around with his recording devices. But to hear even the contemporary day folks reinterpret some of those old folk songs and some of their folk song festivals, I think is absolutely fascinating. And sometimes it gives me a new way of thinking about the phrasing, the melodic phrasing of some of those figures and stuff like that.
Well, I don't think there's a better piece of band music. Well, I put it in the top 3.
Yeah.
In Horkstow Grange.
Oh yeah.
Second movement, the slow movement.
Yeah.
How do you put more into less than 40 measures than that? And you listen to that, I don't know how many thousands of times I've heard that piece. I don't know how many dozens of times I've conducted it and rehearsed it. Here's another point. I think you, as a conductor and as a musician, you are what you play. And you internalize that. And playing music of that stature changes you. It changes the molecular structure of your spirit. And I've been listening to that piece for 25, 30 years now. What effect does that have on you as a musician, as a composer, as a human being? To see that kind of passion can be released in, I think it's 34 measures. My God. And here he did it by writing out an old man's singing.
Right.
How many levels of meaning are there in that piece? You know, it probably took Grainger a day to write that, you know,
Right.
And we're still digging deeper and deeper into that piece. I never do it the same way twice.
Yeah.
And Oh my gosh, it is a spiritual release for me to conduct that piece.
Yeah, that's
Hooray for Granger.
yeah. Well, that was it's kind of a good transition because you mentioned that you've just published a transcription of the piece. Tell us again the title of that piece and where we can get it.
All my stuff's published at C. Allen Publications, and that piece is called "There Was a Pig Went Out to Dig." And probably grade 3, little, almost grade 4, but pretty solid grade 3, and
Okay,
it's very very playable, and there's a lot you can do with it. I also have arrangements of it for brass and woodwind choirs.
very cool. So let's talk about your compositions because you obviously you conduct. We're getting ready to talk about a new book that you authored, but let's talk about your compositions. What are some of your favorite compositions that you've written?
Oh boy. Um, you know, that's like asking which of your children do you like best. Come on, man. Um, I just I've spent the last 3 years. Well, let's talk band music first. I'm a big fan of Turlough O'Carolan, a blind Celtic harper that lived during the Baroque era. I did a piece of his, a melody of his, transcribed it very Granger-esque, called Bridget Cruz. Alchemy is one of my favorites. Here Be Dragons. Oh, it's one of my most popular pieces. I've just guest conducted it twice in 2 weeks this past spring at different high schools. It'll bring the house down. Most of my stuff is not contest music. I have stayed away from writing your traditional contest piece because I don't like that music very much. And now my stuff's getting played at contests. Alchemy, Here Be Dragons, Aztec is being played. But I got a sabbatical back in 2015 and I wrote a symphony about Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. That's one of the things I do out here. I fish, I draw, I compose, and I visit all these Native American ancient sites around here. And
Wow.
that piece has 11 movements. On April 23rd, we did a performance in the Two Hill in St. Louis. We combined my college with University of Missouri St. Louis groups. We had 250 people on stage. We
Wow.
packed the Two Hill, and which has, there was like 2,000 people there.
Nice.
And I didn't think about it at the time because I was so engrossed in trying to keep 250 people together. But what a joy to see all of that come off, because we did it with visual imagery. That's one thing I'd like your guys to know, is that all my pieces are the music's about something. If you ask a lot of band directors what this piece is about, they'll say, well, it's about 4 minutes. So, yeah, I won't do that, man. I have to, music is not a virgin birth. It has to come from something else. It has to be inspired by something, or it's just a series of notes, pretty notes maybe, or whatever notes, but without that meaning, it's hard to be expressive through that. So all of my pieces, band, orchestra, percussion ensemble, whatever, it's and all my symphonies, and you asked favorite pieces. One of my all-time favorites was a piece of music I did based on landscape paintings called Grouse Creek Symphony, and all the movements of that are published separately at C. Allen for band. The orchestra things, the whole symphony's by rental, but that's a very moving. It's very Aaron Copland-esque. It captures these landscapes of Kansas and the scenery there. but those are my favorites. A couple of orchestra pieces that get played a lot. The Black Sea gets played a lot. And that's one of my earliest, I think that's the first piece that C. Allen published, and it was their bestseller for a long time. It's been played at Midwest. It's been played all over the place. So, you know, that's a good piece. And I do a lot of fiddle arrangements too.
Okay. So, I didn't know that about your...
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of what I do is bring in guest artists with my orchestra. Bluegrass musicians, jazz musicians, people that don't read music, African drumming, R. Carlos Nakai, the Native American flute player, anything that's not about orchestra, I'll do their charts for them. I've probably done 300 or 400 charts with Kansas, Three Dog Night, John McCutcheon, Barbara Higbee, Laura Love. I mean, it's extensive. I do that every spring, and it's kind of interesting to bring in these kind of people, you know, to do this kind of stuff because the sparks fly.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it. I'm always up to something, and I'm always interested in doing stuff that's never been done before.
Yeah.
That's my main thing.
That's very cool. And speaking of sparks flying, you have actually just published a new book through C. Allen called The Spark. And I'd love for you to tell us, I'm going to read what is written on the back of this, but quickly, what is The Spark? What is the purpose of this, and what are you trying to do through your book?
It started out as, you know, as you get older, you get kids that are out, that your former students get out into the real world.
Right.
And they start asking you questions. It started out as a series of essays to these students. Some of them were having a good time, some of them weren't. See, that's what I see as our problem in this, that the book tries to address, is young directors getting out there and flailing around. They get in a bad situation and they get out. There's lots of data on how many band directors don't make it past 5 years.
Yeah.
And the other part of the problem is either they get out or they stay in. There's a lot of directors that retire and stay on the podium. They lost their spark, you know. But that level of enthusiasm that you have, your own personal spark, has to be kept alive and passed on to others, because that's how you got into it. Somebody passed that spark on to you.
Yeah.
You didn't have it. Think back on when you got it. Like we did at the very first of this conversation. Every one of us has someone they're indebted to, whether it's their parents, first music teachers, whatever. Being a music teacher, you don't choose this profession. It chooses you. Mm. It's something to be taken very, very seriously. It goes way beyond contests. It goes way beyond anything that, you know, it's a lifelong pursuit. And that's the meaning of the book, is ways to think about teaching music from the podium. It's called Notes from the Podium. And, you know, your level of enthusiasm is your own spirit coming out. If you want to be the perfect band director, all you have to do is make yourself perfect and then buy a baton. Until then, we got some work to do. Every time you step on that podium, all your good points, all your bad points are right there.
Right. And I did, and I loved reading the book. I thought it was fantastic, but we don't have to just take my word for it. I'd like to read Ray Kramer's words on the back of this. He says, "The Spark is a publication every teacher needs to read, absorb, and infuse in their own day-to-day teaching. If I would have had access to this publication as a young teacher, perhaps I would have become better organized, more focused, with a better understanding of dealing with parents, colleagues, administration, along with the daily surprises that occur with students at every age level. And I think that just kind of sums up it volumes about what it is. And if you don't mind, I would like to read one that kind of stood out to me. And when I mentioned it to you, you said that this one is one of the controversial ones.
Oh, controversy, yeah. Well, the other part of this that after writing several of these, I found out what I was actually doing was writing to myself. I was writing to myself. We never learn it all. We never know it all.
Sure.
It's a constant improvement thing. And this is a book that, I wrote to a 21-year-old Gary Gackstatter, from I won't say how old I am now, but an experienced Gary Gackstatter writing to this young guy. But go ahead. Yeah, I'm interested in hearing this one.
All right, so the title, and first, I just wanted to show everybody, one of the things I love about your book is that each page is kind of a thought, and it's an expansion of a thought, but more than anything, it gets you as the director to think, as the teacher, as the conductor, as a musician, to think about what's the purpose of everything. And one of the things that I love is how you've got the essay here, and then you got a place on each page, and each page has it so that you can make your own notes and everything, and just reflect on it and it's almost like a journal in addition to being a good read and everything. But I'm going to read, you are how you play. Actually, that's not what I was going to read, is it?
No.
The page.
But that's a good one.
It is a good one.
You are how you play, and you play how you are.
Yes. All right. Which we were just talking about earlier, becoming part of the music in a way a little bit. All right. It's not what you play, but how you play it. Or is it?
Really?
Does the music you have chosen have meaning beyond notes? Will it enhance and increase the love of music in your students? Will the music help students feel the spark? Will it teach and reinforce the fundamentals of music? Does it have value beyond mere entertainment or competition? Is this piece of music authentic? If the answer to any of these questions is no, then do not play it. You cannot afford to waste the time it will take away from teaching quality music. It's not what you play, but how you play it, is a cliche parroted by music instructors who emphasize technical perfection over musical value. Trophies are fine, but making music for and from the ego is shallow and will not last. There's far more to it. The spark needs fuel and air. Performing poor arrangements of entertaining or popular music can also be a dead end. Shallow music produces shallow results and does not reinforce a higher standard. Perform quality music. The hardest decision is what to play.
Oh, baby.
Yeah. But and there's so much truth. And one of the things that I loved about that is there's so much truth to it. I mean, if you think about it, your typical band, and I'm talking about concert ensembles, concert band, symphonic band, you're doing 3 performances, 4 if you include the assessment or the festival or whatever we're calling it these days. And on each of those, each of your ensembles is playing, most schools are only programming 3 to 4 per ensemble with that. So there are students that are going to be with you for 4 years if you're a high school director. If you're a middle school director, they're with you for 3 years. There are a lot of students that are only going to be there for 1 year. There are some that are going to be there for 2 years. So, if a student is only going to play 12 to 16 pieces of music with you, Or if you're fortunate enough, they're playing 48 to,
Yeah,
what is that? What are
exactly.
those, what are those 50 pieces you're going to choose to have an impact on that high schooler's life?
Yeah, I, uh, that is a great thought. Is that we live as band directors. I did it too. You know, I thought when I first got out, you know, it mentions the ego. Oh boy, you know, that was me in high school, man. I wanted all the medals I could get. I wanted to be first chair this, first chair that. I wanted to play higher, faster, louder, and it gave me my identity. It actually saved my life because in Guyman, Oklahoma, if you weren't a jock, you were nobody,
Right.
and you know, it gave me my identity. But there's always somebody that can play faster.
Yeah.
There's always somebody that can outplay you, but there's nobody that can play you. That's our message.
Yeah.
So if we provide vehicles of music for self-expression to get the student to learn that there's something beyond words in your own spirit that can be expressed through music, and you are the only one that can express that. And when you join your spirit with other spirits, souls, hearts, minds, that becomes a very powerful experience. Then they get the idea that this is not just for this year or this concert, it's forever. I want to play music. I have to play music. It's
Yeah.
not just, I'm not going to play music from the neck up, you know. I had a music publisher tell me one time, don't ever publish anything titled beyond A, B, or C in the alphabet because the directors won't look any further in the stacks. So, you know, what you play is the most important thing, you know. And I'm sorry, I'm going to ruffle some feathers here. Um, there is and this is what the contest system has done to band music in a lot of ways. Every composer out there right now, well, not everyone. There are a lot of composers out there right now that are just trying to write the next contest piece. And there's a lot of band directors that just want to buy the next contest piece so they can, oh, no, 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 no. Because by the time you're my age, you look back, you can't, you know, the trophies don't mean anything anymore. Um, but the experience does. Uh, and so meaningful music. And then you got to look at it from your own idea too. What kind of conductor do you want to be in 10 years? What kind of music do you want to put into your own soul? What program do you have of improvement of your own music? Are you just going to play the same stuff over and over again? The same style over and over again? You can't afford to do that as a creative artist. You've got to get into other areas. You've got to explore. That's what's fun about music. And I'm sorry, so much band music sounds the same today. It
Yeah.
really does. I'm sorry that it does. But that's a impact of the contest system.
Yeah. Well, again, I really enjoyed reading the book, and I love the format that you put it in, where the conduct.
It's just little meditations. You can keep it on your desk, start your day with it. My buddy Ron Sykes threw in a bunch of chapters about really a lot of nuts and bolts things for young teachers to put in to their rehearsal techniques and how to build a program and things like that. But, you know, one of my favorite chapters in there is talks about looking at a little kid, and he's in the 5th grade, she's in the 6th grade, but they're not. That kid, that little boy, is actually 70 some odd years old and he's still playing his trumpet. That little girl is in her 80s and she still plays flute.
Yeah.
When you look at them the very first time they get that horn out of the case, you ought to be able to see where they're going to be. And they're going to be able, because you're going to hand them the spark. It's almost prehistoric, because there was always somebody in every tribe that was the spark maker, and they would build the fire, and they would teach their son usually to do that with them. And so they always had somebody that could make fire. And that's what we're doing. We're providing that spark. We're giving that spark out to as many different people as we possibly can.
Yeah. So as far as catching the spark from Gary Gackstatter, you've got a couple of events coming up pretty soon, within the next bit of time here. And where can people visit you and find out more about you? You've got something coming up pretty soon.
Oh, my new website's coming up. It's my old one's old. So in the next couple of days, the new one's going to be up. It's got all my music on it, all my artwork, all my books, all of this stuff on it, all the links to C. Allen Publications. By the way, C. Allen Publications does a great job. Percussion ensembles, band music, orchestra music. Oh my gosh. My next big event is July 1st and 2nd in Tulsa at Sades Music. They have a survivors workshop for graduating music educators and young teachers. And I'll be doing some lectures on the spark there.
Awesome.
To talk to them. And then they take the whole show down to Conway, Arkansas. Sades Music is a great music store. They have 3 or 4 music stores in Tulsa. And they do a lot for band directors and music teachers in that area. And I've got a bunch of friends that work there that I graduated with. And so the spark will be on display there. And then at the end of June, I did a chamber arrangement of my Chaco Symphony, and it's going to be performed at the Abiquiu, New Mexico Chamber Festival. And that's coming.
And that's at the end of June. And the session that you were talking about earlier is June 1st and 2nd?
June 1st and 2nd in Tulsa.
Okay, very good. And that is fantastic. Gary, we are coming up to the end, and I do appreciate all the time that you've given us. I do like to ask people one question, and it comes from a tweet that I recently put out on windconductor.com. And what is your coolest experience on the podium?
Well, you'd like to say it's some giant performance like that Chaco thing back on April 23rd. But for me, it's in rehearsal. When we reach that level and everybody knows it, you know.
Yeah.
There are times, well, I think the last time I conducted Horkstow Grange was last year. And one time in rehearsal, I had tears forming in my eyes, and everybody knew it. There was some kind of electricity in that room. 90 people creating this. After we polished and polished and polished it, we were finally able to express it on the level. And, that's something you cannot recreate. You can hope it happens in performance, and it did, thankfully. But there are moments in rehearsals that's where, people don't, making music is not just about performing. It's about being with other people. It's about sharing your love of music and sharing your tone quality and sharing your heart and soul with all these other hearts and souls. And that's when we have fun, is in rehearsal, is we work hard. We're beat to death by the end of them. But, when you feel like you've actually given your all for that rehearsal time, then there's a feeling of release. You've looked forward to it all this time. You put everything into it, and then there's this release afterward. Yeah. Those are my favorite moments.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, Gary, I have thoroughly enjoyed spending the last hour with you, talking to you, learning a little bit more about you, gleaning some wonderful, wonderful insight into who you are and, how you approach teaching and creating music. And I just thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And to all of our listeners, we definitely want to pick up our own copy of The Spark. It is a fantastic book. It's not heavy reading in the sense that, it's written very approachable, but I'm going to forewarn you, it's going to cause you to think. It's going to cause you to really dig down deep into who you are as a conductor. And I highly, highly recommend it. It is such a great.
The original title of the book was "Why Are We Here?"
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I think every day we need to wake up and be grateful that we've been given this gift.
Yeah.
It is a gift to be able to share the spark with people. It is an absolute gift. And like I said, I don't think you choose music. I think music chooses you. And when you finally realize that, then the sparks fly. Yeah.
Well, Gary, thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
All right. See you.
Yeah. And this has been Aaron Noe with wingconductor.com talking to Gary Gackstatter. Again, I do recommend that you go out and purchase the Spark. You can get it through Sea Island Publication as well as some of your retail music stores. So definitely check that out. And definitely check out Gary's wind band music. If you haven't looked into his stuff, if you're not familiar with it, you've got a homework assignment. Thank you, guys. You've been wonderful.